Malaysian Airlines plane from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing suddenly vanished from air traffic control suite.
Disappeared en route to China. There was no reports of any emergency and no distress signal.
There's 239 people on that plane. They've all got family, they've all got friends. They're all going through the what if, the where are they, will we ever get them home?
I was in a daze. I was scared of not seeing my husband, Patrick, again.
There was nothing known. All that we heard was the news about the plane missing on a loop.
Bear with us. We are not hiding anything.
It was just so overwhelming not knowing what happened.
We were all hoping they were somewhere still alive.
You know, there was this feeling that grew with every passing day, that the search effort was falling short.
You've not got that definitive answer. So I went into investigative mode.
The government just wasn't doing enough, despite all of their resources and all of their connections. We had to do all of this on our own, self-funded, self-initiated.
The likelihood, given the size of the area, is we're in for the long haul. It will take many months.
How do you know it's an accident? Do you have proof? The plane went all over the place.
过了1年，到今天也没有真相。
表达我们一种决心，我们不接受马来西亚1月29推定我们乘客死亡。行了，这是完了吧？这是我们不接受的。老百姓都知道了，来证明我们的决心。
Currently, I'm trying to solve the mystery of Malaysia 370.
We just found this piece of debris.
My theory about what happened on Malaysia 370, it's the only thing that explains it.
In regard to the captain, he was in the prime seat.
There's something else more to this than meets the eye.
Recovering more debris means we might be able to get more answers, find out exactly what happened to the plane.
If we don't find what happened to the aeroplane, this mystery will stay alive for the rest of time.
The big question, the one that everybody wants the answer to, surrounding the disappearance of MH370, is did this start from on board the aircraft? And did the captain play a role in the hijack, murder of innocent people?
I think they know what happened, and they don't want to say it. They need to say something. So the easiest thing is to say, yeah, the pilot was responsible. It's the easiest thing to say, okay?
The sky is clean. Sterling record. Sterling record. I was really angry with the way they speculated stuff, like they knew everything.
Anybody I could blame, I would blame. But it's very difficult for me to, to say that Captain Zahari done it. If we want to accuse somebody, we need to have proof.
But in fact, we have the evidence. Captain Zahari rehearsed this on his home computer and his simulator.
Malaysian police have searched the home of the pilot, Zahari Ahmed Shah, and his sophisticated flight simulator has also been removed from his house.
Some data has been deleted from the simulator, and forensic work to retrieve this data is ongoing. I would like to take this opportunity to state that the passengers, the pilots and the crew remain innocent until proven otherwise.
The FBI had supplied to the Australian Transport Safety Bureau a deleted flight plan from the captain's home computer that showed a flight to the Southern Indian Ocean. And that practice flight had been done a month before. So it suggests that this was a carefully planned event.
The most likely and plausible account is that it was the captain. He'd practiced a highly unlikely route that overlaid almost exactly the actual final path into the southern Indian Ocean. There is no other reason I can think of as to why that flight path was programmed into a private flight simulator.
What are you doing? And I would say, you know, if you're looking at what he's doing, he's testing how much fuel and where he's going to be when the aircraft runs out of fuel. He's a planning man. He's a logic man. He's thought this through.
What was Zahari doing on the simulator? The captain was practicing a trial in which the airplane ran out of fuel in the middle of the Indian Ocean. To me, that's not a game. And especially if you're so close to where Malaysia Flight 370 is believed to have ended up.
Well, I actually fly simulators too, and I do all kinds of things, you know, what-if type scenarios, and I believe if you looked at the simulator of mine at home, you'll find me, you know, all over the world doing things that are just having fun. So whether that has a nexus or a connection to this, I don't know.
The flight simulator information is the most interesting of all of the information that has been released. That said, it is a small fraction of what I understand are thousands, if not tens of thousands of flights, which we do not know what their destinations were.
What we know to be true, actual facts, are that it was a pretty normal flight, and it was on its way to Beijing from Kuala Lumpur.
370, contact altimeter 120.99. Good night, Malaysia, 370.
But it disappeared from air traffic control radar 2 minutes after the captain said goodnight.
At that point, this invisible aircraft turned fairly sharply left. But this turn was not insignificant. This turn back was through very nearly 180 degrees.
Military radar shows it turning back, flying across northern Malaysia, turning right up the Straits of Malacca into the Andaman Sea, and disappeared from military radar, but subsequent evidence just does confirm that the aircraft turned south.
We didn't know what the purpose of the turn back was. Was it a hijack, or was it like a suicide mission by the pilot? It could have been an accident, it could have been something that went wrong on board, we just don't know.
We've had cases where people thought it was an intentional suicide, when in reality, the person was incapacitated or impaired, and it was a physical ailment that was behind the behavior of the particular operator of the aircraft, in this case, maybe a pilot.
The mere fact that he turned back, flew right along the boundary, and then turned right heading up the Straits of Malacca in Andaman Sea meant it was a controlled, planned flight.
Oxygen deprivation explains it. It's the only explanation for illogical action by a pilot who had no apparent reason to do the things he did.
When you are not getting sufficient oxygen to stay conscious, that is called hypoxia. Hypoxia can be caused in an aircraft at 30,000 feet or thereabouts by a failure of the aircraft's pressurization system, because then suddenly you're at that altitude as if you were standing on Mount Everest, above 30,000 feet, in very, very thin air.
My theory is that the pressurization failed and there's insufficient oxygen, and that eventually hypoxia overcame the pilots on this aircraft.
There was a Helios Airlines bound for Greece. The crew didn't realize the aircraft wasn't pressurizing, and they gradually succumbed to hypoxia and became unconscious. The aircraft just flew on, and eventually it ran out of fuel and crashed.
You get hypoxic, it's like being drunk, right? You don't get enough oxygen to your brain, and you start to feel giddy or lightheaded. You get stupid. Essentially, you get stupid. I think the first officer, Farik, was flying the airplane. I think the pressurization failed, and I think he knew he had to do something. He turns the plane around, he heads to Kuala Lumpur. Then he doesn't go to Kuala Lumpur. Okay, so then he turns around in another direction, and then he flies off in a manner that makes no sense at all. Round about that time, I think, is when the last of his oxygen-deprived mind can survive. And he fell unconscious. And that airplane flew on until it ran out of fuel, just like Helios.
The assumption that the aircraft had crashed because the pilot was unconscious or dead and the aircraft ran out of fuel is one scenario. The other scenario is the pilot is still alive and well at the end of the flight. In this case, it is reasonable to assume the aircraft was hijacked by the captain. People wonder what happened inside the cabin and whether people were alive when the aircraft disappeared. I think there's little doubt that the captain depressurized the aircraft and the passengers became hypoxic and unconscious, which would result in death.
I don't think the co-pilot had anything to do with it. He was the unfortunate soul that probably was sent back to go and get a coffee or something like that and was locked out.
27-year-old first officer, Farik Abdul Hamid, was engaged to marry another airline pilot. He was happy in his personal life, according to all of the people who have spoken about him.
Once the first officer was locked out, Captain Zahari would have put on his own oxygen supply and give it half an hour, and he would then repressurize the airplane and off he would fly. He would take his mask off. Things would be normal. He'd just be the only soul left alive on the airplane.
These allegations about the captain having committed mass murder or, flown a suicide flight, up till today, we don't know what happened. So I have no particular theory. But for me personally, I never immediately felt that the pilot was 100% responsible for the disappearance.
This is the flaperon. The flaperon extend at the back of the wing, used for takeoff and landing. They found it off the coast of Africa. Quite amazing. The parts of an airplane actually floated for that long. When we looked at the flaperon, we said, there's evidence here to try and figure out if somebody was in control of flight MH370. The most critical question is whether the flaps were up as they would be in cruise flight or down when it entered the water. If the flaps were down, then we know somebody was controlling the aircraft. The flaps cannot extend by themselves. There's no automatic flap extension no matter what. That has to be done by an individual. It has to be done by purposeful action. In my opinion, the evidence points toward the captain. This piece here that we see here is what we would call pristine. There's no force against it. There's no buckling, there's no banging, there's no damage here. The reason is, at the end of the flight, the flaps were extended. The aircraft didn't enter the water in a high-speed dive. The aircraft entered the water in a low-speed, ditching attitude. So somebody, at the end of the flight, was controlling the aircraft. The official investigation was telling the world that this aircraft flew unpiloted for 5 or 6 hours, that eventually it ran out of fuel. We knew that didn't happen. But here's what I believe. At the last stages of the flight, the pilot had the intention of putting the aircraft on the water in such a way as to cause minimal damage, have it sink to the bottom in one piece, and nobody would ever see it again. It would be the greatest mystery in the history of aviation.
Yeah, no, they're renowned. I believe many folks are aware of them, so they were not new to me, and they've had success. They had a pretty good success rate of finding aircraft.
I would like to reiterate our unwavering commitment towards solving the mystery of MH370 incident.
I put high hopes on the Ocean Infinity search, as they claim that they have very credible data on the latest locations on the wreckage. So with the offer by Ocean Infinity, that is very convincing.
At the time when Ocean Infinity came into the picture, they were by far the most advanced deep sea search company out there. They had like everything, the manpower, the ships, the technology, everything.
They were searching up to 1,200 square kilometres a day with autonomous underwater vehicles. They had very long battery lives, which was a significant innovation. And they were all rated to 6,000 metres, so they could search the full depth of every area within the search area.
This was a fantastic technology to search the ocean floor, and we were very hopeful that it might come up with the wreckage of MH370.
When they went ahead with the search, I think there was a lot of expectation. Given the kind of technology that they brought to the table, it seemed in some ways that this might be our best chance.
Well, going into the search, it gave you a sense of great responsibility. I mean, this is modern day's greatest mystery. 239 souls that's gone missing with no answer. There was a mountain of pressure on the entire crew. All eyes were on you. It was the first time that this kind of technology had been used. The amount of coverage that we did with 8 AUVs from one ship was massive. It was a no fee, no fine basis. So basically, if we didn't find it, nothing was paid. Ocean Infinity covered all costs for this search.
No fine, no fee. I mean, you know, it's a good deal. With all the equipment that they had, I was very hopeful that, you know, Ocean Infinity would be able to locate MH370 only if the search can go on.
We've been out there in 18-meter or 60-foot waves, 90, 100-mile-an-hour winds. It can get pretty rough. And all you can do is just to keep your fingers crossed, keep pushing forward. We had covered around 112,000 kilometers squared, which was massive. As far as this being under a deadline, you push the envelope a little bit more. You're so sure that the briefing you've been given, the info that you've been given, that we're going to find it. We're going to be the ones that actually give closure. Until it finally got called off.
There comes a time when we have to stop it. We cannot keep on searching for something that we really cannot find. If anybody has any information, we will consider resuming the search. But at the moment, we have to put a stop to the search.
It was heartbreaking. And if it was that heartbreaking for me, as much as it was heartbreaking for me, I can't imagine what the families felt.
at least when you have a search, the focus is we should find the plane, and the media are talking about that. So there's still a focus on this. The day they finish the search, they suddenly, it's over. Okay, we didn't find it. We tried, but we didn't find it.
It really is just heartbreaking that it's another search has been conducted and turned up empty, and it's always more questions than answers. We're like, is that the right place? Is the plane really there? We start questioning everything that we know.
8月7号，就是1周之后，他们才来人，来到中国，跟家属介绍了这个报告的内容。
I know it can't go on that long because it's very expensive. Everything that was incurred was borne by Ocean Infinity, so they could only do it for a certain time. But what more could they have done if they had maybe just stretched it a little bit longer?
Operational days on a vessel like that are many hundreds of thousands of dollars. They not only completed the area that we suggested they should search, they continued to search further up north for a number of days which were, if you like, uncontracted by the Malaysian government.
It was entirely reasonable to expect that Ocean Infinity would at least find some evidence, be that floating in a debris field, be it on the seabed. Certainly the engines I expected to be discovered, but they found nothing.
This longest, largest, most expensive search in aviation history failed because they searched in the wrong area.
As the search went on and nothing was found, consideration should have been given to the pilot landing the aircraft, which meant that would have been outside the initial search area.
So we're not entirely surprised by the fact that the search by Ocean Infinity is ending at this stage. But what we are surprised by is the sentiment by the Ministry of Transport in Malaysia that seems to be trying to rush an end to the search, and so by making statements such as, oh, there will be no more extensions, so that we are looking for closure, and we want to rush the final report, we want to release it tomorrow. So I think all of these things are quite concerning for the next of kin.
Malaysian authorities have released a detailed report into their investigation into missing flight MH370, but mystery remains about what happened to the plane.
When the final safety report was released, we thought we would finally find out what happened to MH370. What happened in the last few minutes? What was my mom thinking? What was she feeling? Were they conscious? What was happening on board? What was happening to the engine? What was happening in the cockpit? And why did all this happen? I wish that these questions would be answered.
We can conclude that the turnback was not because of anomalies in the mechanical system. And we have carried out simulator sessions to determine how the aircraft turned back. We are unable to determine with any certainty the reasons that the aircraft diverted from its far flight plan.
At the end of a long presentation and some volumes of paper, the conclusions were exactly to restate what we knew on March 8th, 2014, that we don't know. I mean, they claimed access to the best brains, and there were many manufacturers, other investigating institutions of other countries. They were all part of this process. I was left wondering if this constitutes the output of the best brains in this business. We have something to be very deeply worried about.
I just remember feeling disappointed because basically it didn't give us anything. It was like, did this happen? We don't know. Did this happen? We don't know. That was basically the gist of the entire report. Personally, I feel that the investigations were quite limited in their scope. We found that the investigations were carried out based on information that was supplied to them.
This was the end of the official investigation, okay? Well, okay, I do not believe in the official investigation, so for me, It means that from that day, I should focus on the only investigation that I believe in, is the French investigation, that are really doing a good job.
Malaysia, at this time, had no permanent investigating body and had created an ad hoc investigation group in order to investigate the accident. The fact is that this independent group cannot be as independent as other bodies. So we can suspect that there is some conflict of interest, but frankly, I have no proof of it.
而且我们中国家属提出，希望他能提供中文版的调查报告。飞机上有大部分都是中国人，这个调查报告的中文版本一部分的中文版本，我总是在觉着他们都在想尽量的让家属少知道事情，让世界上的人少知道事情，他们在隐藏，这个就是给我的这个最直观的感受。
The rest of the report was basically one whole big we don't know. It did clear the crew and the pilot of any wrongdoing because there was no evidence to support that. It was really, to me personally, a non-factor because I never assumed it was the pilot or the crew.
I feel very relieved and so happy. The fact that she's cleared, but still that's not the end of the story. We want the plane or the wreckage to be found.
But you feel that the report clears your brother's name?
Well, according to the report, yes, there was nothing negative about his character, nothing negative about the nature of his work, his professional record, his family conditions, nothing negative.
I only tell you, we could not detect any abnormality with the pilots. That's the only thing I said. We did not say that they did not do it. Okay, it could be possible, but we are not excluding it.
There will be people who will guess at what might have happened on board the aircraft, and there's no way to disprove it because you don't have any evidence to disprove it. But I think the purpose of the investigation is to go based on the information that it has, and the information that it has shows that there was no evidence of that. If someone has the evidence to show that, by all means, that's something that needs to be entertained.
This is from the official accident report issued by the Malaysian government. The investigation found there was no evidence pointing to motive or mental instability that would have led either Zahari or Farid to commit mass murder. And as for Zahari, he was a very competent pilot, almost flawless in the records, able to handle work stress very well.
Captain Zahari is one of the top pilots as far as competency, authority, and trust. He was actually checking the co-pilot. He was a check airman. A check airman is a pilot that checks their competency level. In his hand, he can actually tell me that I'm good enough or I need to go back to school. Captain Zahari would be the guy who will fail me despite being good friends, despite me being his superior in the corporate standing, but he will have no hesitation failing me if my competency level was in question.
Malaysian 370, standby.
What's unusual about the speech analysis is that it's new information. It's scientific information accepted by the community that can be added to our understanding in the investigation to make a compelling case.
Malaysian 370, request level.
370, we are ready, requesting flight level 350 to Beijing.
There are characteristics of speech that the computer can pick up. This is analyzed by the same program that analyzes heart rate. But heart rate is about once a second, or a little bit faster, whereas pitch is about 1/100th of a second. It's something you wouldn't notice in normal conversation.
3 to right of takeoff, 9. 3 to right of takeoff, Malaysia 37, thank you, right.
Co-pilot talked to the ATC, and then they take off normally, and the co-pilot was flying the plane. Zahari was doing the radio. And this is common when you're doing a test. The captain will tell you, fly the plane as if you're a captain to see your level of competency.
In the case of the captain of Malaysia 370, we had only about 9 statements to air traffic. But in analyzing it on the computer, the fundamental frequency of one of the statements was significantly higher than the others. And there's other evidence of stress to support it.
Malaysian 370, climb flight level 350. Climb level 350, Malaysian 370.
The controller did not instruct them to report when they reached flight level 350.
Malaysian 370.
The captain reported that he was at flight level 350. The first time, it's technically a mistake, but it's 1 o'clock in the morning, report where you are, and just also reestablish your connection with the controller, make sure he's alert. So to me, it was good practice. But the second time he repeats it, several minutes later, this is 7-minute-old information, it's really unnecessary, and it's unusual for a Czech airman to demonstrate a bad procedure like that.
Malaysian 370, maintaining level 350. Malaysian 370.
When I heard the radio, the recording, I knew straight away it was Zahari. I don't see any stress. I can't see at what part the stress was. It looked normal.
When you listen to it, you can hear that it's higher, but it doesn't sound very different.
Malaysian 370, maintaining level 350. Malaysian 370, maintaining level 350.
The computer picked it out as being statistically unusual compared to the others. The difference was about 30 hertz, but to the computer, it is significant. This was about 12 minutes before the airplane departed from its flight. The cockpit is quiet at this point. The workload is very low. It's a funny part of the flight to be showing this kind of stress, and it's not due to the words he's saying, because he said almost the same words just before. The final statement came up significantly high in terms of speaking rate.
Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9, good night. Good night, Malaysian 370.
The captain was speaking faster than in any of his other statements. He also made a mistake in that one, a subtle mistake, but he was given a frequency, contact Vietnam on this frequency. Normally you should repeat that back, and he skipped it here. It's a little bit surprising.
Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9, good night. Good night, Malaysian 370.
The combination of speaking fast and making an error like that, it does suggest that the captain was showing unusual levels of stress or distraction. Something was happening that was not related to what he was saying and was not related to cockpit requirements. It would suggest that he may have been aware of what was about to happen. Based on the speech evidence alone, we cannot rule out the possibility that a hijacker came in the cockpit. However, it seems much less likely, given the timing, the possibility of getting through the protections of the cockpit, the possibility that the crew did not send alerts down to the ground. In the event of a deliberate action, the first officer would have to be neutralized in some way. The captain has certainly within his authority, he could send the first officer into the cabin. Unfortunately, there's also an axe in the cockpit. That is another possibility. He could have neutralized him with that.
Zahari is not a violent man. He never got into a fight with anyone. 40 years flying, aviation industry, we have some corporate bash-ups, curse each other in the meeting room, but nothing to the level of violence.
Absolutely not violent, absolutely not confrontational, absolutely not bad-tempered, absolutely not easily triggered. A safety pilot, He's a safety pilot. He taught us everything, No way. I put my life on it.
You're going to fly for 6 to 7 hours before you ditch the plane somewhere. That is superhuman emotion. And I don't think Zahari has it in him to do this.
You can't dismiss it, you can't embrace it either. Like most things with MH370, we're always in this in-between zone of possibility versus, truth and reality. So that's, I would put this as well in that same realm.
All cases remain open in the light that new evidence is submitted. And there have been many times that we changed our probable cause, and it can change the conclusions or other factual information in the report.
My instinct regarding the disappearance of MH370 is something definitely went wrong. I don't know what it is though. I can't blame the pilot, but I do believe there is foul play. I do believe there is cover-up. And again, for what reason, I have no idea. But in today's world, in today's day and age and technology and things, for what's happened, I still believe someone knows something. There's so many whys and we need those answers.
An accident is a sequence of events. No matter what kind of accident it is, what kind of vehicle involved, you have a number of events that take place. In the case of Malaysia Flight 370, you have a number of dominoes that fall, but you don't have the final one. We just wasn't able to make that final leap to that final domino.
我相信370的事件的发生，绝对不是单独的人为事故或者单独的机械事故，它是一个综合体，而且它背后有着不可告人的、不可让人知道的一些事情被隐藏了，所以只有找到飞机才能解决这一切。
We will never know what happened, why it happened, and most importantly, we will not know how to prevent it from happening again. If we don't find the plane,
there's 239 people on that plane, all different ages, races. There are people on that plane, doesn't matter where they come from. They've all got family, they've all got friends. They're all going through the same hurt. They're all going through the what if, the where are they. I personally can't say anyone's at fault until they find that plane.
It's not mostly anger, it's just frustration. What are you doing about it? I'm just hoping. How else will we find the truth if we don't find the plane?
Why you're angry? Because I believe some people in this world will know exactly what happened. And it's not only one person. It's a big story, it's a dirty story, and this involves, I would say, many different countries.
Why do those with an interest, Malaysia, China, Australia, and America, because America made the airplane, why is it in their interests to stay totally quiet and to say, this is closed forever, we're never going to investigate this again? That's the implication of this total silence. Because mysteries stay alive for the rest of time. If we don't find this wreckage, this mystery will stay alive for the rest of time.
Well, you don't need me to tell you it's one of the greatest aviation mysteries of all time. Now, over the years, pieces of debris have washed up and there have been many theories as to what happened to the plane and where it crashed. But now a British aerospace engineer claims to have found it thanks to revolutionary new tracking technology.
Amateur radio people send test signals, hundreds of them, every 2 minutes around the globe. The way this works is an aircraft, when it crosses the path of a radio signal, can disturb and interrupt that radio signal. It's similar to radar.
It's very interesting because we've always wanted something new, because we're not sure whether the existing data is enough, and it's always good to have new data or new information that could potentially help narrow down where the flight ended.
You can follow that data and you can see where an aircraft may have disturbed the radio signals, and you can pick up those disturbances. There are in total 160 of these detections.
It's a technology that has never been used before to sort of pinpoint the end-of-flight location of MH370. We just hope for peer review so that we know how credible this data is and whether it can be used to basically narrow down the search area, which will help in basically advocating for a new search.
What I know is that the community of people, experts, scientists, and so on are quite divided on this question, on this paper and the technology and the recommendation.
I was an amateur radio operator for about 20 years, and I know from my personal experience that the data collected in the Whisper system is not capable of identifying an aircraft. I don't know of any experts with experience in RF radio propagation work or over-the-horizon radar work endorsing this idea.
Richard Godfrey is doing his best using whisper analysis to find the plane. I don't know if it works or not. I do know this, that the crash location that he has identified is supported by the University of West Australia.
The VSPR data from Richard Godfrey matches with what we are saying from the oceanography. So that is quite satisfying from our point of view, because somebody else has come independently and said, oh, we agree with the simulations on the oceanography done by UWA.
It is 33 degrees south and 95 degrees east. It's a point in the Indian Ocean about 1,993 kilometers almost due west of Perth.
It will only take one more search and we will find it.
It has the potential to be taken forward, and that's the only one that I have heard of in recent times which at least makes a claim to a search spot, a search site.
we remain sympathetic to you, the family members and next of kin, and we are also keen on careful consideration and study on all new credible information which may be put forth to identify the location of the aircraft.
Whose business is it to find credible new evidence? Yeah? Malaysia's business to state what are they going to do next to find that credible new evidence? Or was it expected to drop from heaven one fine morning?
It cannot remain a mystery, or just be known as that on the documentary, The Mystery of MH370, because we need this settled.
The journey's been long, it's been tiring. It's had an emotional toll, not just on myself, but on my family. My marriage has failed. I don't think there are any words to say how much I miss Kathy. I have a massive hole in my heart that no one can ever fill. You know, when you got special people in your life, everyone has that little place in your life, in your heart, and mine's empty where she sat. And it's really, really hard just dealing with that emptiness.
There have been some very, very, very deeply lonely days and evenings, the night, because I think what one misses are conversations. Somebody you turn to in an instant and, talk about something that, springs up in your mind. Or you're watching something and you turn around to, discuss something that just struck you because it was triggered by something that you were seeing.
You just want the people that you love to be with you all the time. And when I got married, my vow said, till death do us part. Okay, so if I don't have Patrick and I don't know where he is, how can I believe until death do us part?
Can you even begin to grieve when you don't even know what happened? Some sort of hope just lingers. For example, I know I speak about my mom in the present tense. If someone didn't know that my mother was on the plane, they wouldn't know that she hasn't been with us for the last 8 years. I never refer to her as gone, I refer to her as missing. So these are the things that I identify in myself as having been unable to accept that she's gone.
They are present every day. I don't need to do anything. A few years ago, when I was thinking of them, I was crying. Now when I think of them, I'm smiling. Because I have accepted it. So it's funny that I can only remember good things. And that's why, when I'm thinking of them, it's a good moment. They are still with me, in a good way.
在中国来说，如果人不在了，我们叫做入土为安。入土为安的时候，一定是要有他的人在的时候。所以到现在为止不能入土为安，就是因为我们没有找到飞机，没有找到人，也就是让我们心里特别难过的一个事情。
Until we find the plane and the black box, if it still works, then only we can find out what exactly happened on board. Let's find the plane, and let all these people on board have peace, because I don't want them to be wandering around. We need to send them off to a better place. We need to be in a better place as well.